Well, hello, nice to meet you. So I'm Katie. I'm an implementation specialist here at BiblioCommons. So what my job is if you were to sign and go with BiblioWeb, you would become one of my libraries. And so I work with you throughout the entire implementation phase. I do your kickoff call. I don't do the technical side of building your site, but all the other things that I can do, like apply your branding, I do. I also do all of the training for BiblioWeb, and I also do all of the events implementation. I do the training for that. So I really am just like working with libraries literally every step of the process. So usually web's taking about 6 to 7 months for most libraries. That helps kind of give you a timeline because,
Okay.
it's a lot of work to migrate your old site over. So
Yes.
basically that's my job. So I am really like flexible with how I demo things. So if there are things that you want to see, questions that you have, like please feel free to interrupt me. Like you won't like, mess up my spiel or whatever. Like I just want to make sure like what I show you makes sense and answers questions that you have. So I know today we want to look at web and we want to look at events. Is there one that you would rather start with?
Let's start with web.
Want to start with web? Okay. Okay. So, have you happened to have seen any of our library's homepages before? Like, are you familiar
Yes,
with some of them? Okay, cool. Were there any that stuck out to you just to put you on the spot?
that is a great question. Actually, my director sent me a couple that she liked, and a few of them
Okay,
were common sites, which is part of why we're talking to you now. Let
awesome.
me see. Who was it? I have a
Yeah, because then we can
file
talk
right
about them.
here. Um,
Love it.
Let me see here. Uh, Cincinnati Public Library, she said specifically.
Okay.
She likes the colors and the design. It's appealing without being cluttered. And she said she liked some of the pages on Boston Public Library, but not all of them. So I don't. But Cincinnati Public Library, she specifically called out as a good one.
Okay, awesome. So let's look. I'm going to screen share in just a second. I'm just pulling up these sites. Because like we'll just kind of talk about them because the cool thing is like if you're a library of one or a library of like 80, like Chicago is, you get all of the same stuff. So like if you really love how Cincy looks, like we can talk about how they did it, or we can talk about how Boston does it, because you're gonna have literally access to everything. So here's Cincinnati's homepage. And the cool thing about BiblioWeb is basically like if you know coding, cool, but like you don't have to because we use drag and drop modules. So that's what's pretty interesting about this product is I actually worked in a library for a long time and I moved over to the IT team and then I went to the marketing team and my library implemented BiblioWeb. And so I was like, what does this mean? Like, what are they talking about? So I have sat where you've sat to be like, what does it look like to migrate a website? What does it look like to imagine our new brand or imagine the look? So that's why I really like doing these demos because it's like I get to find out, kind of where you are, what issues you have, but also like, we can use this to brainstorm a little too. So, anyways, this is Cincinnati's homepage. I personally also love this homepage because I think it showcases the brand. I can get the vibe, I'm gonna air quote the vibe of the library. Like they feel really fun, they feel kind of fresh. I can see they've got their collection on here. So what's cool about this is we integrate with BiblioCourse. I know you're going to get the demo on that one, but I'll show you how web kind of touches events and course. It just makes it all into like one basic backend package. So you can just configure what you need and it happens. But yeah, Cincy is a really, really fun one to look at. They've really nailed kind of colors, the look, the feel. So that's a good one too. Now, Boston's good too. They're actually talking about a redesign. So I'm curious to see what they end up doing at some point. Because like they've had this homepage for a couple of years, but they do a good job of like getting their stuff visible, which is really nice, because a library is now at this point more than books, right? You have different things in your collection. Maybe you have different services, you have online resources. So they do a good job of like really trying to like, get their content out there. Now, one I'll show you just for funsies to take away and look at later is Grand Rapids Public Library. This one's been resonating with a lot of my libraries right now because it's similar to Cincinnati, but graphically it's a little more achievable for some libraries. And so they just rebranded within the last year. So a lot of libraries kind of like to look at this one because they've really leaned into their new brand. So that one's kind of fun. Oh, sorry.
Do they also do their events with you, Grand Rapids?
Yes, they
Okay.
do. Mhm.
Writing them down as an example.
Yep. Yeah, they do events with us. So you can kind of see like how they've started to incorporate their logo into their event images and things like that. Just a really, really clean site. And like, we don't want to call it minimalist because it's not, but it has that kind of like not overwhelmingness about it, but still branded. So this is a good one just to kind of peek through for ideas. Another one just to kind of look at in general is Chicago. The reason I have people look at Chicago is because they've been with us since the beginning. So they have tons of content. They just have like used everything that we offer. So they're just kind of a good one just to like explore basically. So they also use events. And then one that I think maybe you might like now that you mentioned Cincinnati, I just pulled up anyways, was Kitsap Regional Library, krl.org. A lot of libraries also like kind of the cleanness but branded look of this one. It kind of reminds me of Cincinnati too, but they do a really nice job. So they're one to kind of look at as well. So let me close a couple of these. I was peeking at your site today too, just to be like, okay, like where are you? What things do you have on your site? What do you have going on? So help me kind of get a feel. So let me show you web specifically. So it is built on top of WordPress. And, so if you're familiar with WordPress, this will be, easy for you to use. But we have upgraded parts of it to make it, work for libraries because, we have to integrate with the catalog. We have to integrate with events. But the thing about BiblioWeb is what we call the cards. So when you are ready to promote things on your site, you're going to build a card for it. And so these cards have different types, like if you wrote a blog, if you used a staff list, think about that as kind of like a collection of like items that, people are like building a theme around, events. And basically you build these cards, you give them an image, they have a card title, they'll have a description, then you apply what we call taxonomies to them. And taxonomies are a way that you can curate your content. So you can apply genre terms to content or audience terms or topic terms. And then when you go into web and you start building these custom pages, you can use those taxonomy terms to then create collections of these cards. So the big idea is basically you build a card once, and then you could have it automatically show up on your homepage or your books page or your kids page or whatever. So I'm just going to build just like a very quick page because like we will do 3 trainings. So like it will get very detailed. So we're just gonna build a quick page just so you can kind of like see what the back end looks like. So oops, wait, county demo. So basically, you get a blank page to start with, but you're going to use all of these different modules. So here's those cards that I mentioned, but there are other types of content that you might want to, embed on a site. FAQs, biblio events like we're going to talk about, stuff from the catalog, and of course your basic modules, heading, text editor, separators, all those pieces. So let's pretend that we just wanted to build like a books page because I have a lot of book content on this site. So I'm just going to drag over a heading quickly. Now these, of course, can be styled, branded, whatever you want, your colors, whatever your font family is. I'll set it to Nanito. Okay, let's make it actually look good. 50. Oh, let's do all caps. It's like there's lots of customization
But we
options
can do
here.
this just through CSS too. Like if I just know I want all of my headlines to be in this point font in this style, we just say H1.
Oh, so we have it kind of built
Oh,
here.
good. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, because some folks don't have
I don't
that
want to
like
mess with all
CSS
that.
background. Yeah, yeah, you don't want to mess with that. We mess with that for you. And what's nice about that too is like we're responsible for helping keep you accessible because we've built in some of
Great.
this. Now, there are some things too that like you could accidentally do. You could be like, oh, whoops, I sent my my H1 to an H6. Well, you can fix it. And you like would make sure like your colors are contrast compliant, all of that. But what we do too is like these modules, we want to make sure they're accessible, that screen readers read them correctly, the content you put in them is read correctly. So we're also really working hard to make sure we're hitting AA compliance too. Okay, so I'm going to show you the magic of the card collections to start. So I'm just going to drag over this module and we'll just call it, what genre do you like? Do you like mystery?
I like
Do you like
fantasy.
sci-fi? You like fantasy? Okay, great. So fantasy books. So then what we can do is apply taxonomies. So let's say I just want to showcase, the staff list that we have. So I'm going to set the content type to staff list. And now you can see some of these staff lists getting pulled through, but you can keep refining this. So you could be like, okay, like you said, I really want to see the fantasy content that we have. So now I'm just seeing staff lists for fantasy. And maybe this was on a kids page, so you could set it to audience of kids or team page or whatever. So that's what the taxonomies do. You categorize things in the back end, you build card collections like this, and then next time a staff member makes you a fantasy list, you're going to make the card for it, apply the taxonomies, you publish the card, it's going to show up here, which is awesome.
I think it's very optimistic to think that staff members will be keeping up with these lists. They won't.
Well, well, I know sometimes that has been tricky for libraries because like the initial excitement is huge, right? Like, oh, I get to make these staff lists. I can leave comments in the catalog. Like this is so cool. And then everybody's like, the real
Yes.
work sets in. Yes. Yes. So what a lot of libraries do is they find the advocates really early, folks who really do want to talk about readers advisory, folks who, have this passion. And a lot of times they'll kind of single out those folks and do like additional training, blah, blah, blah. It does require some work though. What other libraries have done though that's really interesting is leverage core to still make content that looks like this. So I'll show you an example. So we're going to dive just a little bit into core here. But basically in core, any search that you can do, we can turn it into a catalog carousel. So I happen to just do a new book search, but like let's do with fantasy. So oops, let's see, fantasy, fantasy, fantasy. I know we'll have it in here somewhere. Fantasy, fantasy fiction. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so now we have our fantasy. It's sorted by date acquired. But let's also make sure it's adult, sticking with the theme of our page here. All right, so we have our new adult fantasy books. So what I'm going to do is copy this URL and we'll come back to events. And I'm going to click on my plus sign in the upper right-hand corner. This is going to be a catalog carousel. I can just
Ah,
drag it onto the page and we could say, new fantasy books, new fantasy books. And I literally just paste in that URL and I have new fantasy books pulling
well,
through.
that's fantastic. We
Yeah, so
currently
like,
have, so we're a Polaris library.
okay.
Make carousels in Polaris. It's difficult. Nobody keeps up with them because you have to go into the back end and put all
Oh,
the big records in.
oh
That's
no.
easier.
No, this is much easier because basically what happens now is, your collection librarians, if they, obviously add new fiction books, they get the MARC records all set up, whatever. If it matches this criteria that I set up here, this is going to automatically update now. So like this is just a URL you basically set once and you leave it. So like if you know that maybe you won't have as much staff content at the beginning, you could build out a lot of carousels and you could be really specific. You could be like, underwater fantasy or dreamy Lord fantasy or like whatever you could build it. If you can build the search and the catalog, you can make it happen on web. The other thing that's kind of cool is leveraging catalog searches but making them look like cards. So I was just demoing this with a library this morning. They needed some help with kind of one of their existing pages in BiblioWeb, and I was like, oh well, what if we like imagine your searches differently so it's not just a catalog carousel. So we could say something like trendy fantasy books. Let's see what I have here. I'm going to do this as a manual selection to show you something different. So you can use the taxonomies to just pull through the content that you've categorized, but sometimes you might want to manually choose content to show up. We also give you that option too. So you can choose what type of card it is. I made these custom cards for the library. You can see I have like time travel romance. And so I can set, cards to also appear when I want them. You can schedule them to go up, you can schedule them to go down. So then you could even think about building, this isn't exactly accurate, but you can see kind of where I'm going. Like you can also think about ways to display
So you can
content
put
differently.
cards into the carousel.
Yep, exactly. So
Oh.
yeah, so carousel and collection are like same but different,
Yes.
right? But yeah, so you could do that. So what I've done like here is I've just done a catalog search for like time travel romance. And so like now here's all the time travel romance. So like if you don't have those staff lists, you could build content like that that still looks like you put a lot of work into your books page, but like you did it. What other libraries have done too is like super fun. Do you have novelists or like do you have novelists at your library?
We have Novelist Plus.
Novelist Plus. Okay. Oops, recommendations. Did I spell that wrong? Novelist doesn't have recommendations for the time traveler's wife. Oh, rude. I can't believe it.
That is a little surprising. It's a very
That's
popular book.
that's shocking. But what other libraries have done too is they'll like, put slash recommendations at the end of a core URL for a popular book. And they'll take this URL and they'll make a card for it. And they'll be like, love the time traveler's life. Check out these read alikes. Boom, instant content. So like there are lots of ways we can think about like reimagining how you can get content on this page. Um, so that's a little bit about how the back end works. So you can figure out different ways to style these cards. You can pull through different, pieces of content. I'm going to show you Biblio events in this context, but I'll also make sure to show you Biblio events too from the patron side. So let's say on your books page, that you wanted to showcase your upcoming bookish events. It's really easy to do that too. So we could say, upcoming book events, and then here's the events instance. And so then I could pick and choose what I want to show. I happen to have a book club event type. So I just click on the little checkbox next to book club. I copy and paste this URL. I paste it into here. I wait a second. And like now the book clubs are pulling through. Like that's all I had to do. And I can style this more. A lot of these modules, as we call them, give you lots of styling ideas. So if you want to display 4 events, 6 events, do you want to show the cute calendar icon? You certainly can. We want to give you options to make this display in a way that's reflective of you and your brand. So the other thing is like if you want to kind of like learn how to like wireframe a site or kind of like build it out with like, empty blocks where you're like, ooh, I know I want this to be, a 3 column or whatever. We give you those options here. We also give you templates if you're like, whoa, I don't want to build a page from scratch. We have templates for you. And we have a lot of templates. So what we've done is we've looked at some of our libraries who have really kind of complex or really engaging pages, and we've built templates out of them. So you could also reimagine like the contact us page is like your get a card page. There are ways that you can reimagine these. So we're going to give you tons of templates too. We have book pages, we have home pages, we have like audience pages. So that's super cool. And you can also save stuff too. So if you end up building a template that you love, you can save it as a template. You can reuse it. You can even save individual things. Like let's say, we styled this up with like a row background, like a gradient. You could save that too and like reuse different elements. Now, the other thing I want to show you is the responsive editor too, because this is important. We could probably hazard a guess that like 10% of your patrons use tablet and the rest are probably split between like desktop and mobile. So we also have the responsive editor built right in for you. So we have the different sizes. Yeah, so here's like mobile, for example. And so you can control like how things display on mobile. So like, maybe on this books, maybe it's a little too big on mobile. And so you can see there's a little mobile icon. So you could be like, oh, on mobile, I want it to display at 35, or I want it to be like blue or something. So you can ultimately control how things look. So we have it for mobile, we have it for tablet, and we have it for the laptop size too. So that's a lot about web, but I want to pause here for questions before I show you more about web.
Okay. So when I'm building a page, is there
Mhm.
a way to like save it in draft mode before it's live?
Yes, save draft.
Wonderful. Yay. Our
Yep.
current, if you can believe it, does not have that.
It doesn't?
You're just editing live.
Oh
It's like
no.
trapeze without a net. It's very exciting, but I could do
Ooh.
less excitement in my life. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
dislike. We're gonna save this as a draft now.
That's great.
Yep.
You had mentioned that you could schedule things like, oh, you want them to go up, you want them to come down.
Hmm.
Um, is that true for like all content types?
Pretty much for all content types. And there's kind of two ways you can think about it. So I'm gonna go back into the page builder and let's just hop into, come on, page builder. We'll hop back into this card collection. Okay, so what I could do is I could say like, I don't want cozy fantasy reads to show up right now. So I could go into the manual selection. I could choose staff list. We'll just type in, whoops, cozy fantasy reads. And so I could say, I don't want cozy fantasy reads to show up until December 11th at 12 o'clock. And then I want it to expire, December 31st. So, so that you can schedule content that way.
That's fantastic. So what I am always looking for with that is it's like for example with Thanksgiving that just happened, we were open on Friday, but I was not here. So we had our
Mm-hmm.
Thanksgiving hours up, but I was not here to take them down. So they stayed up for the entire weekend until Monday when I got here. Would
Yeah.
this solve that problem?
This would solve that problem if it's a
Yes.
card specifically. The other thing that's kind of cool too is like I'll kind of deviate into core for a second. Let me see. Since we're past Thanksgiving, we don't have any like system messages, but
Right.
we also have little system messages here that can say like
Oh,
closures.
I've seen
We're
some of those. Yeah.
yeah, those can be scheduled too, so they can go
That's
up and
great.
get expired as because like if you don't want to work on Thanksgiving, don't. So we've tried to make that easier for you.
Okay,
Now,
great.
the other thing that's cool is
Katie, can I ask
how,
a quick question? I'm so
yeah,
sorry.
no,
So
no,
when,
please.
just to clarify, and I know the answer, when you expire a piece of content, it doesn't go away. Like it gets archived, right?
Oh,
So
good.
you
So you
could
could bring it
Yeah, yeah,
back
reuse
yeah.
out.
that at some
Yeah.
point.
Yes. Yeah. So when we expire content, we're just expiring it from like where it lives on the page, but that content can still be found. And actually,
Good.
Susan, we could segue into something else a little bit too. So one of the other cool features with BiblioWeb is what we call the Explore page. The Explore page is where patrons can go to see all of the cards that you've created. And I used to like this tool when I worked on the desk as like a way to help with like reader's advisory, for example. So like you could come up to me and be like, hey, I love fantasy. And I could be like, ooh, maybe that's not my genre. But you know what? Let me show you all of our fantasy content. So I could come over here and be like, all right, let me click on fantasy. And then, oh, you want the staff list, or maybe you're interested in a blog or whatever the content is. And these are your taxonomy terms in another way. So patrons can kind of self-discover different kinds of content that you have. So once you publish a card, it'll show up on your homepage or a books page or wherever, but it will also always go here. And then what's true, Susan's saying too, you could bring back these cards like for seasonal content. You could be like, oh, I know we made a Halloween list. Let me schedule it to go up, on my books page in October. So you can control it there too.
If
Now
we
on
don't
the
want it to appear on the Explore page, though, is there a way to just unpublish it?
Well, you could unpublish it, yes, but then nobody could find it, which could be
Well,
kind of a
I'm just
bummer.
thinking of the hours. Like, I don't need somebody finding our Thanksgiving hours on the Explore page.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I that would make sense. The other thing too, okay, we'll segue a little bit again too, is that how we actually do hours and locations. So hours and locations are built in core, but we can also leverage them in web. So that way you can make custom pages for like a branch. So actually, let me go to Chicago. Let's go to like a library who's built theirs out, just so you can kind of see what this looks like. Locations, because the location pages are actually one of the best places to make sure you have your hours updated.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so here's Albany Park, for example. And So it looks something like this. Now you can do a lot of customization here, but there's their hours. Here's the holidays and closures. So what most libraries do when they have BiblioWeb, Biblio Events and Core is they make sure this is updated and they often use the system message. I have seen some libraries
Huh.
add them to their homepage. Let's see if Stark has theirs up right now. Ta-da. Like some libraries will do kind of like a cute
Okay.
graphic or something like this. And the same idea is here too. Like we could figure out ways to get this to expire on,
Oh,
January 1st or something like that. So
cool.
we have options. But the location pages are nice because, I'll probably assume too, like your location pages are highly trafficked. People are Googling what's the closest library to me. So some libraries even take these as a chance to display more stuff like here's the events at this library. Hey, this library has printing services. Here's the map. This library has a teacher in the library. So you can really think about ways to customize these and make them work for what your patrons might need.
I have a weirdly specific question.
No, ask.
Stark Library, they had a slideshow on their homepage.
Mhm.
Did you embed a card in the slideshow so that it like automatically pulled the next 6 events coming up or something like that?
You mean this specific piece or this specific piece?
I was thinking of the slideshow specifically.
Okay, so what this is another way of displaying cards. So there are two ways we do this. There's one thing called a card slider, and then
Mhm.
there's something called a hero, and they're same but different. So this is, I want to say they're using the card slider here. And so you would basically just choose again, like which cards you want to go here, and then a patron will click through them.
Cool.
Now, Chandler uses the hero, the big hero, and it looks something like this, where
Oh.
it is prominent, right? So like, but it's, if you have like awesome graphics or whatever, like this can be super compelling. Um, so like, so they're using a hero. So there's lots of ways we can think about how the
The reason
cards
I'm asking
display.
about this is
Yeah,
that we
tell me.
currently have digital displays. Um,
Yeah.
and these are in each of our branches. And currently the digital display is not that featured thing down there. That's just
Okay.
a simple
That's what I
slideshow.
was curious about.
The digital display has basically a bunch of slides that we've built in its Communico's broadcast system. And one of the
Oh,
slides has embedded in it
okay.
an events carousel. So when that slide comes up, it cycles through all the events that are coming up at that branch specifically. And we is the one thing that no matter who we've talked to, nobody has something that can solve that problem for us because we're leaving Communico. Like we're leaving
Oh, right.
after next year. And that's the one thing that we have not found a way to replace.
So we do have an events API.
Oh, great. Okay.
I am definitely not technical enough to answer how it works, but um, it goes through like how the endpoints work. So I think you can take this and then like have it display on like a sign in the library or
I
something like
think
that.
someone could.
Yeah, someone who's
Maybe not
technical
me.
could probably figure this out. So yes, I believe this would be something similar that you could do. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I want to show you just quickly how to build a card, just so you can kind of see what that workflow looks like. And then I want to make sure I have time for events too.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just going to show you what a list card looks like, but I need to find a list. Well, I said Halloween earlier, so let's just pull up a Halloween list for funsies. Okay, so these lists live in BiblioCore. So that way, we can pull the collection through. I'll just click on this one so you can see what it looks like, but you'll get more of this in the upcoming demo. So
Okay.
lists are really meant to display your collection. They're that curated idea. Staff can leave annotations about them, why they liked it, why you should try it. We showcase the cover art. This one's kind of fun because like, look at that. They have like a cookie tin. Like, cool. Well, let's copy this one. And then when you're ready to build the content, you choose what type of content you need to create. So here's a list card. And then most of these is as easy as like pasting it in for the most part. And then I click on grab list info. It pulled through the cover art for me automatically. I can edit it still. I could be like, Halloween tricks and treats, Halloween tricks and mostly treats. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And then you can, add this card description. We'll just take it out like that. So we have 140 characters. Now, when we're talking about scheduling, there's also something unique that we have too, which is what we call timeliness. Because sometimes there's content, like seasonal content, that you're going to want to bring back year after year, but maybe you don't want to maintain it on an individual card basis with the schedule and expiration. That's where this also comes into play. So I can say this card is timely, the end of September, September 18th through, going back in time, but October. And then I could say that repeats annually. So then what this can do is also help boost these cards to show up when people are looking for Halloween stuff in the catalog, which is really cool. We also have some additional expiration options. So maybe you do have a card of like holiday hours where you could be like, yeah, let's delete this because it's only happening in 2024 or something like that. There's also unpublished. This can be handy if you have stuff that happens like on a quarterly basis or, something like that. And then we have the different taxonomies. So this Halloween list, we could say it's for adults and it's also for teens, and you would ultimately control these terms. So you'd be like, okay, we don't call them teens, maybe we call them young adults, or we don't call them seniors, we call them older adults. So you would control all of these terms. We'll say horror for this one. And then the other thing that we also do is we're working on thinking about ways that we can get your web content to show up in the catalog, because we know a lot of times people just come to your website, they put a book on hold, buy. But that's a bummer because like you do so much more stuff. You have services, you have programs. So what we can also do is for the cards that you create in web, we can help them show up in the catalog. So I could say, like
Ooh.
yeah, so we could obviously do something like Halloween, but maybe what do kids like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Like I
Oh,
could
this is like a Google
brainstorm.
ad. When you
Yes.
search this, show them my ad. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
exactly. So if you have a sense of like what people might be looking for, you can use this to your advantage, which is pretty cool. And then you can publish your card. The other thing you can also do is like you could backdate a card. Maybe it's a day where you're making like 100 cards. You don't want to flood the site with 100 cards. So you could backdate, you could forward date. So we also give you those options. Now I want to show you what this actually does, like in the catalog. So I'm going to go to Chicago, I think, for this one, since they have lots of content. And this is again diving into core, but it all relates back to web too, because all the pieces touch. So here, I just typed in a book search, and what they're doing is they're saying if somebody searches books, we should maybe show them this list. And you can get really specific if you want to. So that's where it can be a lot of fun. Like, let's try crafting. Let's see if they have an event, for example. Hard to say because we're in, December, there's kind of less happening in libraries. We've got a staff list here, no event, but that's what's really cool about it too. Let me try genealogy. Yeah, here they're promoting an online resource,
Oh,
which
that's
is cool.
wonderful.
Yeah, so you
We
can,
really need more traffic to our databases. That's always a goal.
well, then this could totally be something for you, because then what you could do is from the dashboard, you could build these online resource cards, give them those keywords, and then when people search that keyword, ta-da, here's your online resource. So
That's fabulous.
yeah, so that's pretty cool. So that's kind of like a quick and dirty like overview of like web. It's the
Okay.
website builder, and it's knowing that the cards are going to be like reused throughout the site. And a little bit about taxonomies too.
Okay.
Okay,
I have a couple of
questions about
questions
that?
before we get
Yeah,
into events.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Security certifications, is that something that's all handled on your end? What do you need from us? Like, is this a yearly update? This is something, it's a pain point with our current one.
We're gonna make it much easier for you.
Hey.
We've just, yeah, we've just changed how we're doing SSL certs. We used to have you like set them up and send them to us. Now we're doing it on your behalf. Like there's still some like IT stuff y'all have to do, like again, I'm not the technical person, like an A name or like a C name or something that like an IT person will do.
Yeah, but you set that up
Um,
once, not every year, I assume.
yeah, I think we renew it on your behalf every 3 months. So like we
Oh,
just kind
great,
of need it
great,
initially, and then we pretty
great.
much handle the renewals. Yeah, so that is nice. So this kind of talks about here we go, an automated process for updating SSL certificates.
Wonderful.
Yep. So we use Let's Encrypt.
Excellent. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yep. Good question. What else?
Um, so coding. I know a little bit about coding.
Hmm.
Just enough to get me into trouble. If it's the kind of thing where like I need to make this really specific thing, do a thing using JavaScript, is that something I can do? Are there limitations? Our current website, if you want to use any kind of script, especially JavaScript, you have to embed it in the head and then it loads on every single page. I don't like
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
want to load script I'm not using on a page I'm not using it on. It slows the site down.
So JavaScript is our tricky one.
Hmm.
So we don't support allowing adding JavaScript to the site because there could be like some security implications that go along with it.
Yeah, you can really break
Um,
things.
yeah, you could really break things. So that's not to say there aren't other ways we could think about like getting stuff on your page. Like some libraries use iframes. Like
Sure.
we will sometimes like review, we'll call them like scripts. So
Mhm.
like an example you can look at is in our partner portal, we have a document called unofficially supported third-party scripts. So like, do you have a chat widget you need to embed or
Oh, that
like,
was exactly my question because
okay.
our lib answers chat widget requires scripts.
Yeah, so this one we support. So like this
Okay.
one we just need like some like code and I like paste it into the back end.
Okay.
What's nice about this is like all the technical people have done the hard work for me. And then like when we do an implementation, I'm just like, here, just send me this. And I just paste it in and it magically works,
Oh,
which is
that's
fabulous.
fantastic. I see Kipu on there as well. Kipu is a big one for us.
Yep,
They
we
do our
support
library card
Kipu.
applications. So,
Yep, perfect. Yeah,
all
no
right.
problems with that. We have lots of libraries who use that one.
Fantastic. All right. One more question about web,
Yeah,
I
I'm
believe.
I'm
Um,
ready.
so Susan was kind enough to send me the different roles and permissions. I did not
Mhm.
really understand them. Could I give a staff member ownership of a page and just
Not
that
of a
page, nothing else?
page.
Okay.
No, not individually on a page basis. So one of the things we talked about doing is like, do we add additional granularity into web permissions? Because there are some libraries who do kind of have staff who kind of become the advocate for the books page or the kids page, but that granularity doesn't exist right now.
Okay.
So it's more about thinking about tasks that somebody might have to do instead of pages they might have to do. So if somebody needs to like edit the homepage, we would only want like a couple people to have access to that, right? Because it's like we don't want to break the homepage.
Right.
So some libraries think about it more in that way, if that helps you kind of.
Sure.
Okay.
So I don't know. I always think about the genealogy page. Our genealogy department does tons of work and they're always, hey, we need this, hey, we need that. I'm like, okay, well, I'll get to it when I get to it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You just want to do this yourselves, but there's no way to give them access to just that page and not the rest of the website as well, which I don't
No.
want to do.
Right. Yeah. They would have access to all of the pages. Now, some libraries do have, like, they have been able to build a level of trust with some staff of like, okay, we trust you. We'll give you extra training. Thou shalt not touch the homepage, but here we'll, hopefully you can stay within here. But to really lock it down, it's more about the tasks they do instead of the pages.
Okay. All right. Ready for events.
Okay. So events is going to live on top of BiblioCore, and I got to close all these tabs because we have too many tabs open. Okay. Okay, so here's what events looks like. So this is just the demo site, but like, yeah, check out Grand Rapids, check out Chicago, go look at Cincy so you can see how they do their events. But these events are, it's a listing. So something that's different for libraries is we don't have a calendar view. So you won't see like that calendar. The reason for that is it really just comes down to like accessibility. It's really, really tricky to make a truly accessible calendar.
No one
This
ever
one,
uses the calendar view on our site.
oh, well, excellent. Then then that's kind of nice. Now this is going to be accessible. Like I can tab through this. And patrons can, look at the dates of events they want to see, but then they can leverage these filters. So your locations would show up here. You would self-identify the different audiences that you do. I know a lot of times there's like state level, like you have to be like, no, kids
Yes.
are always five
Yes.
through
We
eight
have
or
specific
whatever.
ones we have to
Okay.
cover.
Yep. So like we can set that up for you. Then you can also choose like the event type. I think about these as like, the aboutness of the event. So you can see games, health, movie nights, you know. Something else we have is program types. And actually, I'm going to hop over to Chicago for this one too. Program types is something that you can use for like seasonal events, quarterly events, yearly events. Think summer reading, you know, Native American Heritage Month. And what's cool about this, the program type, is you can apply other events under it. So let's say it's Native American Heritage Month. You know, maybe you have an author come in. Maybe you're going to do a kid craft. What somebody could do is click on Native American Heritage, and they would see, you know, literally all of the events, regardless of the event type. So I kind of think of them as like a big umbrella to capture lots of events here.
Yeah, it's like a theme.
Yeah, it's like a theme. Yeah, there we go. That's the word I want. It's like a theme. Exactly. And so I'll show you what the back end looks like, but not at Chicago site. We'll do it on the demo site. So here, we're going to log into Core this time. And so this is the back end of Biblio events. And we've pretty much tried to account for every type of event you could possibly have at your library. Single events with no registration, single events with registration, repeating events like story time. Do they happen daily? Do they happen every Tuesday? Do they happen on the fourth Wednesday of the month? We have all those options. Is it an all-day event? Is it an event where you need to go to session 1 so you can attend session 2, 3, and 4? Like, so we have all that built in. We have templates if you want to do templates. I know sometimes that's handy with like the descriptions of certain events, like story time should always say this, right? So you could build templates for that. And there are different tabs here. So we can see the new events or revised events. They'll have like a little tag here. Awaiting publication would be events that are, you know, going to be ready to be published. Published events are going to showcase the published events. And archived events are your past events. Now, one of the things that we do is we have some different workflow permissions for Biblio events. So if you have a system where, you know, you want somebody to create an event, but you want a reviewer to review it, and then like you want to publish it, we also have that workflow built in too. So that's what these two tabs are for. So like I
We
said, you can
definitely
see,
need that. We have
you
somebody
definitely need
who
it. Okay,
proofreads all the events before they go out.
perfect. So they would have the reviewer permission. And what they could do is like, they could say, oh, you know, somebody misspelled the word teen, and they could like thumbs down it and send it back to the person, and they could re-update it, and then we could
Okay,
mark it as
perfect.
reviewed. Yeah, so we have that workflow built in. The other thing that's kind of nice too, before I like show you how you build events, is things you can do here. Like you can, you know, obviously we need to edit events if you have to after they're published, you know, the date changes, the room changes, whatever. You know, you can cancel events, you can unpublish them, you can make a copy. This is kind of handy if you don't want to use a template, but you want to copy a past event. So we have those options. You mentioned like the state thing. One of the things that you can do too is like export past events. So let's say you had to, you know, do a report on all the baby events you had for the last quarter,
Great.
you know,
Okay.
September through December. So you could apply different filters and stuff here, and you could export the list. And this would export, you know, the title of the event, the location, the attendance, for people on the wait list. We have a wait list, by the way. So we have all of those different features.
Fantastic. It just exports as a spreadsheet.
Yeah, Excel.
Good.
Yep. So then you can manipulate it to your heart's content. So here's what the creation interface looks like. Now I have really high permissions, so I, in this case, could publish my event, but a creator, for example, has the lowest permissions. They couldn't, but a reviewer, you know, we could give them just review permissions. You could give them just publishing permissions. So we've tried to kind of account for lots of different workflows. But the event creation itself is pretty straightforward. We got to give it a title. Let's say knitting for beginners. Then we choose what event type it is. Crafts. I think I have crafts in here or something like that. Do I? Maybe. Arts and crafts, right at the top. You can have images pull through. You could do special images if you wanted to. We can select our audience. You know, let's say it's for adults and teens. Down here, we can put in a description, you know, join us for knitting, whatever you want your description to be. You know, we have some of the basic text editing tools you might need. You want to put in bullet points, you want to put in a photo, do you want to link to something? One of the cool things is this ability to add a title. So let's say this was like an author event instead, you know, I don't know, Brandon
Oh,
Sanderson is coming. You could put in a link to Brandon Sanderson's book, and then it would show up in the event description. So somebody could click on the book and place it on hold, which is cool. I'll pull up Chicago again. Just actually, let's go to Arapahoe. Let me see if I can find an example of that real quick. Let's see. What do they have for author events? Do they have anybody? Let's see if they did it in this one. Yeah, so here
oh,
they've
cool.
embedded, yeah, from the catalog. So then I could click on Ghost Boys, go to the catalog, place a hold. So, yeah, so here's that. Then we have registration options. So I mentioned no registration required for your drop-ins, but we have online registration. So, here's where you set your event capacity. This is where libraries who have had trouble, shall we say, with like people taking advantage of group registration. Sometimes they'll say, oh, you can only register a group of 4, or you could do a group of 10.
Oh,
So we want to
okay.
give you control over like what group registration looks
Okay.
like. We also have when registration starts and ends. So sometimes libraries will publish events and be like, registration opens, December 1 at 5, because they want to like, generate excitement. So we also want to give you those options too. So you can choose when registration begins. You can also have a choice on when registration ends. Do you want it to end when the event begins? Some libraries for like virtual events, they'll set it to end, 30 minutes before the event starts in case they have to troubleshoot or whatever. Um, we'll also have an option here if this were to be like a series event where you could say like, patrons have to register for the whole series or one series, or they have to register for that first session and they can't register like for 3. They need to go to 1 to go to the rest. So we give you that option too. Waitlist functionality is here. And then something new that we've added, basically born out of the pandemic, was ways for you to include additional info in confirmation and reminder emails. So, do they have to do something in advance? Should they bring something? Is it going to be canceled because of weather? And here's how that process goes. Or, for a virtual event, do you want to throw in the Zoom URL? So we want to make sure you have ways to, provide that information to people.
Okay.
Now, here's the other big thing is the date picker. So this event could happen once and I could set my day, set my time. I could add another if I want to, but maybe it's like a reoccurring event. And here's where then you can build some of the complex examples. Is knitting for beginners December 4th through December 7th? Maybe. Is knitting for beginners weekly every Wednesday? Sure. Or is knitting for beginners monthly, the first Wednesday of the month or the first Monday and Wednesday of the month. So you can really control the reoccurrence pattern here. And once you have that set up, then you just choose if the event is online or which branch it's happening at. And then you can say like, it's in the cafe or the makerspace or wherever.
Could it be a hybrid event? We do have a few that we stream them and we have people in person.
Oh, good question. Okay, so that one isn't supported, but I know a lot of libraries have asked about if we could support that. So in that case, what libraries are doing is they'll build 2 versions of the event,
Ah,
one for online and one for in person. I know it's a little tricky too because it's like, like how do you limit, like how do you limit the sizes that way? But yeah, that one isn't supported right now.
Okay.
So that's also like a super quick and dirty events overview. But do you have questions about it? Do you want to
I
see
do.
other examples? Okay,
I will
I'm ready.
astonish you that I have questions.
No, I'm ready. I love it.
So is the events, the calendar, is this type, could we do room reservations through this as well, like for meeting room groups?
If you have libcal,
Oh, I don't.
or actually keep asking me more about your question before I just like leap in with libcal. Tell me
Oh, no,
more.
yeah, that was the whole question. Like, is this also a room reservation system or is it just a calendar of events?
Okay, so the answer is this is really just a calendar of events. So if you did want to incorporate some kind of meeting room software, what a lot of our libraries are using is actually libcal. I can show you what libcal looks like. We actually are a reseller of libcal.
Oh, we're actually considering them. They're one of our,
Okay,
I'm sorry, they're one of your competitors. We are looking at LibCal and LibGuides
okay.
as one of the options here. So I'm pretty familiar with LibCal because we had their
Okay, cool.
weeks ago.
Perfect. Okay, so what some libraries do then is like, yeah, they'll have, they'll link off to the reservation on LibCal, like through their nav or whatever. But one thing that we do that's a little different is, let's say that I think the Ballard branch has this. Yes. Let's say that, knitting for beginners, I need to reserve the room. So a patron can't reserve the room. We can integrate with a LibCal then. Oops, I got to put in my event capacity. Hey, look, if you forget to do something, it will tell you. Okay, let me hit save again. What I can do is I can also book the room through LibCal without going to LibCal. So I can come here and I could say, cool, I set it for the Ballard branch. I know that this is going to be in our small meeting room. I can even add setup and teardown time. So if I need 30 minutes to set up for knitting for beginners, I can do that. So then this just pushes the booking into LibCal, so I don't have to go into LibCal to do this step. I can just stay in Biblio events.
Okay.
So that is something kind of cool too. So we only do this with LibCal. We don't do it with any other like eVanced or anything like that. So I could, click check available, and then I could request the room, and then I'll get a LibCal confirmation that this room has been booked for this event. And then I can just continue creating events. So yes, in answer to your question, it's not a software for patrons to book, but we can
Oh, we
leverage
don't
it
use
if
that
we need
anyway.
to.
We
Okay.
don't let patrons book their own meeting rooms.
Oh,
There's
okay.
too many complications.
Isn't that the truth? I used to manage our room reservation system at my library. It was stressful sometimes.
So, okay, great. One more question about, I think one more question. I can't promise that.
No, it's fine.
So when you add an image to your event, is there a place
Mhm.
to do the alt text for the image for screen readers?
Oh, good question. Okay, so not in Biblio events. We can flag that for the product team though, Susan, of like how we want to handle alt text for events with Title II coming up. But in BiblioWeb, we do give you alt text options. So
Okay.
in the media library, you will upload your graphics and we're gonna wait for it to load. There we go. And I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so we have this like fun little hourglass here. This would be a decorative image, but let's pretend it had text on it, right? So yes, you could put
Oh,
in your
perfect.
alt text here. We link to all of our documentation about how like the best way to do it.
Very
And
good.
then you can put in a caption, a description, then you can mark the purpose here as decorative or informative.
That is fantastic. So I don't have to type the alt text myself every time I use the image. It comes with it.
It comes with it. Yeah.
I like that a
Yeah.
lot.
So then this is a good thing to know too. Sometimes you might have an image where, on one page it might be decorative, but on one page you need it to be informative. In that case, I would actually upload them twice and have one marked as
Okay,
decorative,
okay.
one marked as informative. But yeah, if you had this hourglass on 10 pages and you put the alt text here, I would see the alt text on those 10 pages. So yeah, you just build it here once. Good question. We haven't had an alt text question for a while,
We
Susan. I
are
like
all
that.
so concerned about accessibility right now with the changes coming.
I know. What is it? 2026 at this point? Like
Something
April or
like that.
something? Something like that. Yep.
Okay, so I will ask, all right, so about the events again.
Hmm.
We currently use Savannah Orange Boy for our emails, and we
Hmm.
send out email newsletters that automatically pull events. They did say they work with BiblioCommons already. They have several libraries who do this, which is great. It's actually why we're talking to you right now. It's because they said, "Hey, have you looked at BiblioCommons?" No, we didn't. So here we are. But the one thing they did say is that the images from the event do not pull through into the event emails. Is that true?
If they say it is, I would
Oh, okay.
I would
I was like,
assume it is.
that just seemed odd. So I guess
I would think so.
that would make that happen if the if the images weren't flagged in the API. That's probably what would make that occur.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that one, if that's what they say, I would probably assume that's the answer.
Just seems strange
Yeah.
to me. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I think that is all of my. Oh, I do have a question.
Yeah.
And don't feel bad if the answer is no, because everyone's answer has been no to this one. Multi-branch events. If we have an event that's happening at several branches at the same time, is there a way to accommodate that?
There is not a way to accommodate that, unfortunately.
I am not surprised.
Um, yeah. Now we've been talking about it too. So the other thing, okay, so I'll just show you this too. Like, let's say you do have that kind of idea where like, God, like I wish like BiblioCommons did that. We have something called the Product Ideas Portal
Oh,
where
great.
you can put those ideas in, you can upvote them. I really recommend putting in like comments for that to like tell us like, yeah, it would be so cool if you did this because like here's the deal. So like here's like kind of similar, like maybe you have an offsite event, you want it to
Oh, we do
associate
have a
it with a
lot of
branch.
those. Yeah.
Yeah, so like we support offsite events. You can fill that out as like a special like location basically. But like here's like kind of similar too. Like sometimes events happen at all your branches. So there are definitely things that people would like us to do. So you can upload those too and help contribute that way. So
Okay.
yes, the answer to that one is no.
That's totally understandable. One of the vendors I was talking to went into great detail as to why that's a problem. I'm like, oh, I know more than I did. Okay.
Yeah, I could definitely see that one being pretty tricky to figure out. What one of our libraries has kind of played around with, this is on Kitsap's site, is they are doing event, I think they're doing event types so that if you wanted, or program types, so you could see like events hosted by a branch. And so like, this is at the sports bar or like the pub. So they're kind of playing around with like a workaround, which I find really interesting. Um, so like there are ways we could think about trying to get around this.
Okay. So wait, wouldn't you just use a branch filter?
No, because they're specifically trying to say like, this event is at Ashley's pub. And so then I can see
Oh,
like the
oh, okay.
address
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
Ashley's pub.
I
So
see,
like
I see.
yeah, so we want to so yeah, we don't want to associate with a branch specifically, but it's close to the Bremerton branch.
Yeah.
So that's kind of their interesting workaround,
Okay.
which I kind of like. So we could think about ways, but yes,
Okay.
the answer is no.
Mm. Okay. Last question, I think almost for sure. Maybe very confident in this. So one of our pain points right now is so we have a graphic artist who spends a great deal of time every month putting together a printed calendar that looks very nice for every branch. One sheet, one sheet for adults and one sheet for kids.
Yeah.
Because parents really love just grabbing it off the counter and off they go because they can put it on their refrigerator.
Hmm.
And that's what they needed. They
Hmm.
needed it in month view. Do you have anything that could maybe facilitate her process and make her life a little easier?
Yes. So it kind of depends ultimately on her workflow, but I'll show you two things, or I'll tell you two things. So Stark Library basically exports everything out of Excel and then they do like something in Adobe. So they have some process. But the other thing that we do, is it called PrintCal? Yes. So we have two articles here about like, are there ways that we can help you create a printable calendar? They might not love this if they're like a graphic designer and have like, a vision. But this does talk about like how you can try and use a product like this and try and build a printable calendar here. So it goes into Excel. You have to like
Oh my goodness.
build a calendar, but so the answer is kind of sort of, I think.
Okay. So we can hand this to her and be like, if you really want to do all of your graphic design in Excel, we have an answer for you. But if
Yeah,
not,
exactly. Or
we
like
tried.
can your graphic designer like take the Excel data and like import it into Adobe and like I don't know.
I'm not a graphic designer. I
Me
do
either.
not know the magic that happens down there.
Same.
So, okay, cool, cool, cool.
Awesome. Okay, I have to run to another check-in call with a library, but Robin, if you come up with other questions or like, want to say something else, like Susan and I are meant to be a resource for you.
Absolutely.
Um, so like, please let us know, but I do have to run to a check-in. I'm so sorry. Um, but I'm gonna
And
stop sharing, but
I
I
can
just wanted
stay
to say
for a
it's so
minute,
nice to meet
Robin, so
you.
we can kind of wrap
Okay,
up.
just real quick, clean up a couple of stuff and that's it.
Yep.
But it's wonderful meeting you, Katie.
Yeah, you too. Have a good rest of your day.
You
Thank you,
too. Bye bye.
Katie.
Bye.
Talk to you
You're so
soon.
welcome. Bye.
Okay.